to Vinyl Friday, where I go through my records in alphabetical order like a big nerd and talk about why I love them. To those of you who are here for the Beatles, we'll be continuing the Revolver Odyssey in the same way that we did the Rubber Soul Odyssey, which is fortnightly. So next week we'll be looking at Eleanor Rigby, which I'm very excited about. But if you really need your Beatles fix, never fear, they will get a mention in this episode because it's the Everly Brothers. Let's get going! It's a good day today. The sun is shining. I'm wearing my favorite pizza socks for those of you playing along at home. And we're going to be covering a song that Rolling Stone ranked at number 210 on their top 500 songs of all time. It's also a song that was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 1998. And I believe it's the oldest song that's been featured on Vinyl Friday to date. I would check that, but I'm not going to go back through the catalogue. I'm sure that some of you know it better than I do at this point. The song is 1957's Bye Bye Love by the Everly Brothers. This is a song that is sweet and simple, but I don't think that we should just write it off as such because it's significant for, I think, two reasons. The first reason that I think this song is significant is more to do with the Everly Brothers themselves. That is that there is something truly exceptional about family vocals being harmonized. The second is that I think that this song captures a really critical moment in Western popular music, namely the genesis of rock and roll music. Let's dig into those two things. Are you ready? I am. So, as is implied by the name, Phil and Don, yes, the very same who are referenced in Paul McCartney's Let 'Em In, are brothers. These are the brothers in question. I have no idea which is which because they do look quite similar to each other. Ironically, given that their trademark is kind of that they sing together, their relationship was actually deeply inharmonious. In 1970, Phil Everly said, "We only ever had one argument. It's been lasting 25 years. They broke up in 1973 formally. On the night of their breakup, Don showed up drunk, and Phil was so angry about it that he smashed his guitar on the stage, Pete Townsend style, and walked off. And that was the end of the band. Despite all of that, as I mentioned earlier, their music is kind of best defined by the dulcet union of their voices. And I think a lot of that beautiful harmony is to do with the fact that they are related. Because they both have this distinctive high nasal vocal timbre. Hello, loneliness. It's very up in the nose, but both of them have that, so it's perfectly matched. The other thing is that because they grew up in the same place at the same time, their accents are exactly the same. Like with my band, I have a different accent to the others in the band, and in order for us to sing in harmony, either I have to match theirs or they have to match mine. Otherwise, it doesn't gel properly. If you grew up in the same place, I mean, the same household even, then you're not going to have that problem. Your accents are going to be perfectly matched. And because they're two different people, there's just enough difference for it to add interest and body. If you layer your own vocals against yourself through, like, multi-tracking, which we covered a lot with respect to Jeff Lynne in the ELO miniseries, you're going to eventually end up with this very tight, distinctive sound that's a little uncanny valley. It can be a little bit too perfect, and it can start to sound artificial, which of course it is because you can't sing in harmony with yourself. Whereas if you're singing in harmony with other people, the difference in the tones of your voices can actually work to your advantage. Beatles, obviously, a really good example of that. Because John's voice, Paul's voice, and George's voice do not sound the same, but for some reason, the blend of those three voices works really well. Another good example is Fleetwood Mac. Stevie Nicks, Christine McVie, and Lindsey Buckingham do not have the same voice by any stretch of the imagination. But the sort of vocal range of their voices is pretty similar, and again, the blend that it creates is just stunning. It's obviously very well liked and quite popular, but we're not up to Fleetwood Mac yet. And that effect is heightened when it's siblings who are singing together. Their voices are that much closer to each other. But because they still have that point of difference, that as they are not identical, I think it creates a beautiful soup of sound. A seamless, incomparable vocal blend. This dynamic is not unique to the Everly Brothers. There are lots of other sibling groups that I think best illustrate this. And while I will concede that it's early in the episode, is it really ever an inappropriate time to have a sibling band montage?
For me, Mr. Shane. Ain't that the truth?
Now, did I have to include that long an example for Lemon Twigs? No. Strictly speaking, no. But that key change... Obviously, there are far more sibling groups than I've featured in this little montage, but are there any that you think should have made the list that I didn't think of or didn't include? Hit me with my shortcomings. What have I missed out? So that's the first thing that I think makes this song special and significant. Their two voices really make this song. Even though they didn't actually write this song, their performance of it is unparalleled. Yeah, so now let's have a look at the second thing, the genesis of rock and roll. Rock and roll is a style of music that is a fusion of multiple other strands and families of music, namely country and rhythm and blues. So let's break that down a little bit further. This song has clear country influences. For a start, it has the legendary Chet Atkins on electric guitar, although to be fair, I really don't think he's doing very much in this recording. As far as I can tell, this is Chet Atkins' contribution, aside from actually discovering the Everly Brothers. And also in the verses, there goes my baby with someone new. Really not showing off his chops, but you know, it adds something to the song. Another thing is that the song has a lovely, earnest 3-chord structure. These are the 3 chords in this song. That's it. That's all of the chords. They've structured them so they're in different permutations. The chord ones go, whereas the verses go approximately. But this element of the song is not particularly bluesy because they're playing the chords straight, as opposed to, which gives it a bluesier twang. That's not to say the song isn't bluesy, but we'll come back to that. I think a good point of comparison might be Patsy Cline's song I Don't Wanna.
Don't wanna walk unless I'm walking with you. Don't wanna talk unless I'm talking to you. Don't wanna be lonesome, don't wanna be blue, baby, that's how much I love you.
It uses a similar 3-chord structure. They're similarly clean and earnest and don't use the 7th chords, which is what I demonstrated before that make it sound bluesy. It's just nice. I like this element of this song. I mean, this is a band that was started as a country band with their parents. It's like a family country band that would play at fairs. It's a song that is firmly rooted in its country traditions. Now let's look at rhythm and blues. What really shows off its R&B influences, I think most clearly, is this introduction. That's almost a stereotypical bluesy riff, and it wasn't actually part of the original song that was written. It's a little riff that Don Everly came up with on his own and thought he'd tack it on to the beginning of this song. They do a similar thing with Wake Up Little Susie. very bluesy intro. I think it's a sort of riff that probably existed in blues music before this. Unfortunately, that's sort of a blind spot for me musically. I don't have a deep understanding of pre-1950s blues. So if any of you out there are blues experts, please feel free to hit me with some examples of blues songs that have a similar sort of riff or groove to that one. But if you look forward, you can see how that tradition carried into rock music, especially bluesy rock music. For instance, have a listen to the beginning of Spirit in the Sky by Norman Greenbaum. Early Grange by ZZ Top, or as we say in New Zealand, ZZ Top. I'm kidding, we don't actually call them that here. ZZ Top. It's a clear bluesy tradition. That's the blues side of it. The Everly Brothers also referred to themselves as an American skiffle band. So skiffle is a sort of subgenre of music that was really popular in the UK in the 50s, popularized by musicians like Donny Lonergan.
Yeah, the rock on the line, they keep the mighty good road. Well, the rock on the line is the road to ride. Yeah, the rock on the line is the mighty good road. And if you want to ride it, gotta ride it like a find it. Get your ticket at the station on the rock on the line.
Or a little-known, sort of obscure but highly influential group out of Liverpool called the Quarrymen. Please note that skiffle actually originates from African American music, as does pretty much everything that's nice to listen to, let's be honest.
They did it, though, by listening to the past, to skiffle's roots in African American culture, including traditional New Orleans jazz and the great American folk and blues musician Huddie Ledbetter, known as Leadbelly.
It's defined by its accessibility, in a sense. Any kid with a guitar could basically form a skiffle group, because you could add to that a sort of tea-chest bass, which is an instrument that looks like this and is made from household items, and like a washboard, which looks like this and is also a household item. So basically, if you are a woman in the UK in the mid-50s and you have teenage sons and you would like to do the laundry, you're shit out of luck. It's not happening. They've made a band.
Well, of course, I've only seen it on television, but my own feeling is that, like a good deal of modern dancing, it is pagan in origin and in expression. One cannot help but feel that it's having a bad spiritual and mental effect upon them.
In that sense, it sort of reminds me of punk, because the barrier to entry is really low. It's very accessible. As long as you have a guitar, basically, you can put a band together. You also don't need to be a virtuosic player. You just need 3 chords. If you can play 3 chords on guitar, that's it. You've got a skiffle group. More importantly, though, skiffle is defined by its rhythm. It's what I believe is like a... what's the word? Is it like portmanteau? Where you combine 2 words together. Anyway, I assume that it's a combination of the words skip and shuffle, skiffle, because it has the sort of like, well, this rhythm. Which you can see sounds kind of like this. It's slower, but comparable. It's got, I think, more of a groove than a lot of country music did at that point in time. You can really hear the sort of rhythmic elements of African American musical traditions coming through. Although, if we're gonna split hairs, technically country music is also derived of African American music, so... But we're not here to break down the roots of country music. We're here to discuss how this broad array of elements comes together and births rock and roll. If you're not convinced yet, I'll keep trying. For example, the Everly Brothers actually went on to tour with Buddy Holly and the Crickets.
Well, that'll be the day when you say goodbye, yeah, that'll be the day.
Also major pioneers in early rock and roll music. Or how about the fact that further down the line, massive rock acts cited the Everly Brothers as being hugely influential in their development as musicians. For instance, Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones called Don Everly, to be honest, I'm not sure which one he is, but he's one of these 2, one of the finest rhythm players, that is, rhythm guitar.
I'm 18 years old. I've been singing with Alan Clark, and we've been doing skiffle songs and doing, blues songs and stuff like that. The Everly Brothers came to Manchester, and me and Alan Clark, who later formed the Hollies with me, decided that we were going to meet the Everly Brothers. Don and Phil Everly talked to me and Alan Clark for what seemed like half an hour, just encouraging us. Well, yeah, me and my friend Alan, we sing your songs, and we really love, and we'd like to make records, and we'd like to be in the business. They stood and talked to me and Alan Clark. It changed my life.
Paul Simon said they were there at the crossroads of country and R&B. They witnessed and were part of the birth of rock and roll. Now, I did not steal this theory from Paul Simon. Rather, I put this theory together, and his point merely supported it. And for that, I feel rather smug. And then, of course, all things have to come back to the Beatles, right? In the early days, Paul McCartney and John Lennon called themselves the British Everly Brothers.
They were one of the very first acts that influenced people like me. The Everlys were very special. I think it's where the Beatles got the two people in harmony thing. John and I were the Everlys, really, when we started up.
A lot of their early vocal arrangements you can hear are influenced by this Everly Brothers, two people singing in harmony sound. For instance, listen to this early Beatles composition, Hello Little Girl. Listen to how their voices blend and how they've written their harmonies.
When I see you every day, I say,
I think that bears a remarkable similarity to the melody in this song. It's got that lovely harmonized descent. So yeah, in a sense, without the Everly Brothers, we couldn't have had the Beatles. And I believe without the Beatles, we couldn't have had all of rock music that came afterwards. And yes, I'm biased. You can absolutely say that, but that's my position and I'm sticking with it. I think before we sign off, it's important to acknowledge the legacy of the Everly Brothers. This music may sound a little outdated to modern ears, but Bye Bye Love is a song that my band covers. It's the strangest thing. It seems that no matter the demographic of the audience we're playing for, people almost always sing along to Bye Bye Love. We started to incorporate the song into sets for younger audiences, and it was still surprisingly popular. And relatively recently, Billie Joe Armstrong of Green Day paired up with Norah Jones.
I don't know why I didn't come.
And they did a whole album of Everly Brothers songs, which is pretty cool.
A couple years ago, I got the record Songs Our Daddy Taught Us by the Everly Brothers. Fell in love with it, and I thought it would be cool to just cover the whole record.
long time gone, I'll be a long time gone.
But I thought it'd be great to sing it with a woman. The first person that came to mind was Nora, and
You sure I was the first?
you were the first.
Nobody else turned you down.
So yeah, I mean, we may be in 2024, but that's certainly no excuse to write off music like that of the Everly Brothers, because as music fans, as rock music fans, we owe them a tremendous debt. We wouldn't have so much of the music that we know and love if it weren't for the Everly Brothers. I think there is a timeless quality to their music, and I appreciate that they always said that despite their acrimonious relationship, they were always united by the music. That's it from me. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support any of the weird things that I do, I'll leave a link in the description to my Buy Me a Coffee page where you are welcome to make a donation. But no pressure, friends. Thank you so much to everyone who has made donations. I appreciate you very much. The last thing I want to say is that I'm wearing my English settlement shirt today for the person in last week's comment section who asked if I'm aware of the band XTC. We are, I estimate, at least a year, maybe two, away from the letter X as we move our way through the alphabet. But when we get to X, we will be spending some quality time with XTC. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you here next week. Have a great weekend! And I believe it's the oldest song that's been featured on... Okay. Jeff Lynne's work in the ELO miniseries. If you're not convinced yet, I do have more ammunition up my sleeve.